Hello everyone! Today we'll continue cycle of seminars with professional computer graphics subject and studying AutoCAD software. This lesson will guide by seminar teacher Domina Inessa Anatolievna. Today our topic is editing and operations with objects. And today seminar aims is to learn how to move, copy and stretch objects, how to manipulate whole objects, and changing pieces of objects. The table below lists AutoCAD's most frequently used editing commands. It shows the tool icons found on the ribbon, the classic toolbar, and the classic menu, and it gives the official command name with corresponding alias where one exists for the typist in the room. Ribbon buttons are on the Home tab's Modify panel in the Drawing and Annotation workspace. In the AutoCAD Classic workspace, look for these commands on the Modify or Modify To toolbar and Modify menu. No matter how you start an editing command, in almost all cases AutoCAD prompts you for object selection, points, distances, and options in the command window. Read the prompts during every step of the command, especially when you're figuring out how to use a new editing command. When all else fails, read the command prompt. AutoCAD's dynamic input system displays command options as the crosshairs. When you see a dynamic input tooltip with a down arrow icon, press the down arrow key to display the command options. You then can use the mouse to select an option. Pressing the up arrow key displays previous input. As we describe, maintaining precision when you draw and edit is crucial to good CAD work. If you used a drawing program and are accustomed to moving, stretching, and otherwise editing objects by eye, you'll need to suppress the habit when you edit in AutoCAD. Nothing ruins a drawing faster than eyeball editing, in which you show objects around until they look okay, without worrying about precise distances and points. Moving, copying, and stretching are for many drafters the three most common editing operations. AutoCAD obliges this need with the move, copy, and stretch commands. The move, copy, and stretch commands all require that you specify how far and in what direction you want objects to be moved, copied, or stretched. After you started the command and selected the objects to be edited, AutoCAD prompts you for two pieces of information. Specify base point or displacement, specify second point, or use first point as displacement. In subtle way, this prompt says that two possible methods exist for you to specify how far and in what direction you want objects copied, moved, or stretched. The most common way is to pick or type the coordinates of 2 points that define a displacement vector. AutoCAD calls this point the base point and the second point, imaging an arrow pointing from the base point to the second point. That arrow defines how far and in what direction the objects are copied, moved, or stretched. The other way is to type an XY pair of numbers that represent a distance rather than a point. The distance is the absolute displacement that you want to copy, move, or stretch the objects. How does AutoCAD know whether your response to the first prompt is a base point or a displacement? It depends on how you respond to the second prompt. It might seem a little confusing at first, but it's actually quite simple. First, you pick a point on screen or enter coordinates as the base point prompt. Next, there are a couple of possibilities. If you then pick or type the coordinates of a point as the second point prompt, AutoCAD says to itself, displacement vector, and move the objects according to the imaginary arrow pointing from the base point to the second point. And if you press Enter as the second prompt without having typed anything, AutoCAD says displacement distance and use the XY pair of numbers that you typed as the first prompt as an absolute displacement distance. Move command. The following steps demonstrate command first editing with the move, using the base point method of indicating how far and in what direction to move the selected objects. This procedure also gives detailed recommendation on how to use precision techniques when you edit. Press Escape to make sure that no command is active and no objects are selected. Click the Move button on the Modify panel of the Home tab. The command line displays the Select Objects prompt. Select one or more objects. You can use any of the object selection techniques. Press Enter when you're finished selecting objects. AutoCAD displays the following prompt: specify base point or displacement. Specify a base point by clicking a point or typing coordinates. This point serves the tail end of your imaginary arrow that indicates how far and in what direction you want the objects moved. After you pick a base point, it's fairly easy to see what's going on because AutoCAD displays a temporary image of the objects that moves around as you move the crosshairs. Specify a base point somewhere on or near the objects that you're moving. You can use an object snap mode to choose a point exactly on one of the objects. AutoCAD displays the following prompt: specify second point or use first point as displacement. Specify the second point by clicking a point or typing coordinates. The second point serves the arrow end of your imaginary displacement arrow. After you specify the second point, AutoCAD moves the objects. Copy. The copy command works almost identically to the move command, except that AutoCAD leaves the select objects in place and makes new copies of them in the new location. The copy command creates multiple copies by default. If you want only one copy, press Enter after placing it in the drawing. Choosing Mode as the command prompt or the dynamic input option list lets you switch between making a single copy and multiple copies. If you mostly make multiple copies or mostly make single copies, you'll appreciate being able to change the default setting. Selection boxes left and right. Selecting objects one at a time works great when you want to edit a small number of objects, but many CAD editing tasks involve editing lots of objects. Like most window graphic programs, AutoCAD provides a selection window feature for grabbing a bunch of objects in a rectangular area. As you may guess by now, the AutoCAD version of this feature is a bit more powerful than the similar feature in other window graphic programs. AutoCAD calls its version implied windowing. Here, how you use it. Window object selection. If you click a blank area of the drawing that is not an object, you're implying to AutoCAD that you want to specify a selection by dragging a window around the objects. If you move the crosshairs to the right before picking the next corner of the selection area, you're further implying that you want to select all objects that reside completely within the selection area. Crossing object selection. If you click a blank area of the drawing that is not an object, you're implying to AutoCAD that you want to specify a selection by dragging a window around through the objects. If you move the crosshairs to the left before picking the next corner of the selection area, you're implying that you want to select all objects that reside completely within or touch or cross the selection area boundary. Fortunately, AutoCAD gives you visual cues that there is a difference. As you move to the right, the window area appears as a rectangular or polygonal area with a blue fill and solid border. As you move to the left, the crossing area appears as a rectangle or polygon with green fill and a dashed border. If you edit in method of preference in selection first, AutoCAD gives you the option of dragging a polygonal window or crossing area, or simply dragging a series of lines through the objects you want to select. You simply click a point and drag to the left or right to get rectangular selection boxes as described above, or you can choose the W polygon, C polygon, or fence option by typing the appropriate letter at the command line. Stretch. The stretch command is superficially similar to copy and move. It has the same interesting base point and displacement prompts, and it shifts objects to other locations in the drawing. But it also has one big important difference. It can move one end of one or more objects, leaving the other end or ends where they are, so you can use it to change the length of lines, for example. Mirror. The mirror command creates a reverse copy of one or more objects. After you select your objects, AutoCAD prompts you to select 2 points that define a line about which the objects will be mirrored. You then have the option to retain or delete the source object. Follow the steps to use the mirror command. First, press Escape to make sure that no command is active and no objects are selected. Second, click the Mirror button on the Home tab's Modify panel. Third, select one or more objects and then press Enter to end object selection. AutoCAD prompts you to define the mirror line by picking points. Specify first point of mirror line. 4. Specify the start of the mirror line by clicking a point or typing coordinates AutoCAD prompts. Specify second point of mirror line. And 5 step, pick a second point. Most of the time you'll want to have polar tracking or auto mode enabled so you can mirror your object precisely. You can also use object snap on existing objects, including ones being mirrored. The latter case is used when you want to ensure exact symmetry between the source and the mirrored objects. The mirrored copies temporarily disappear and AutoCAD prompts erase source objects, yes or no. Rotate. The rotate command pivots one or more objects around a point that you specify. Follow the steps to use the rotate command. First step, Press Escape to make sure that no command is active and no objects are selected. Second step. Click the Rotate button on the Home tab's Modify panel. Third. Select one or more objects and then press Enter to end object selection. AutoCAD prompts you for the base point for rotating the selected objects. Specify base point. Fourth step. Specify a base point by clicking a point or typing coordinates. The base point becomes the point around which AutoCAD rotates the objects. You also have to specify a rotation angle. Specify rotation angle or copy references. 5 step. Specify a rotation angle by typing an angle measurement and pressing Enter, or just press Enter to accept the default value shown in angle brackets. Alternatively, you can indicate an angle on the screen by moving the crosshairs until the coordinates section of the status bar indicates the desired angle and then clicking. If you choose this alternative, you will need to use Auto Mode or Polar Tracking to indicate a precise angle, for example 90 or 45 degrees, or an object snap to rotate an object so it aligns precisely with other objects. After you specify the rotation angle by typing or picking, AutoCAD rotates the objects into their new position. The Rotate command's copy option makes a rotated copy while leaving the source objects in place. Scale. Scale merely uniformly scales, enlarge or reduce one or more objects up or down by a factor that you specify. Here is how it works. First step. Press Escape to make sure that no command is active and no objects are selected. Second step. Click the Scale button on the Home tab's Modify panel. Third. Select one or more objects and then press Enter to end object selection. AutoCAD prompts you for the base point around which it will scale all the selected objects. Specify base point. Fourth step. Specify a base point by clicking a point or typing coordinates. The base point becomes the point around which the objects are scaled. AutoCAD prompts you for the scale factor. Specify scale factor or copy reference. Don't assume that the AutoCAD will scale the objects, but leave them more or less where they are in the drawing. AutoCAD scales the distance between objects as well as the objects themselves. For example, if you select a circle to scale, pick a point outside the circle as the base point and then specify a scale factor of 2. AutoCAD not only makes the circle twice as big, but also moves the circle twice as far away from the base point that you specified. If you want to make a circle bigger, but leave it where it's currently located, make sure that you use the Sen Object Snap to select its center point as the base point for the scale operation. 5 step. Type a scale factor and press Enter. AutoCAD scales the objects by the factor that you type, using the base point that you specified. Numbers greater than 1 increase the object sizes. Numbers smaller than 1 but greater than 0 decrease the object sizes. Negative scale factors are invalid. Just like the Rotate command, Scale also has a copy option with which you can make enlarged or reduced duplicates or selected objects without altering the source objects. And both Scale and Rotate remember the last scale factor or rotation angle entered throughout the drawing session. Array. The array command is like a supercharged copy. You use it to create a rectangular grid of objects at regular x and y spacing or a radial arrangement of objects around a center point at a regular angular spacing. For example, you can use rectangular arrays to populate an auditorium with chairs or a polar array to populate a bicycle wheel with spokes. The kind of array we describe in this chapter is the old style but still very useful non-associative array. Non-associative arrays are simply copies of the source object. They dwell on the same layers as their source, and they can be edited individually even in older releases of AutoCAD. The following steps describe how to create a rectangular array, which you'll probably do more often than creating a polar array. Press Escape to make sure that no command is active and no objects are selected. Second, type array, don't forget the hyphen and press Enter. Typing a hyphen in front of an AutoCAD command normally tells the program to run as a command line rather than a dialog box. Starting with AutoCAD 2012, typing array runs the associative array tool, whereas typing array runs the non-associative version. First, AutoCAD prompts you to select the objects you want to array. Third step, select one or more objects, then press Enter. Next, AutoCAD prompts you to choose the type of array you want. Enter the type of array, rectangular or polar. Fourth step, type R and press Enter to create a rectangular array. Next, you specify the number of rows and columns you want and the distance between each of them. AutoCAD prompts, enter the number of rows. 5th step, enter a value and press Enter. AutoCAD next asks the number of columns, the distance between rows, and finally the distance between columns. The rows and columns numbers include the row and column of the original objects themselves. In other words, entires of one don't create any new objects in that direction. 6. Enter values for the number of columns and the distance between adjacent rows and columns and then press Enter. AutoCAD creates regularly spaced copies of the selected objects in neat rows and columns. Offset. You use offset to create parallel or concentric copies of lines, polylines, circles, arcs, or splines. Follow the steps to use offset. Click the Offset button on the Home tab's Modify panel. AutoCAD displays the current command setting and prompts you for the offset distance, the distance from the original object to the copy you're creating. Current setting and specify offset distance. Second step, type an offset distance and press Enter. Alternatively, you can indicate an offset distance by picking 2 points on the screen. If you choose this method, you should normally use object snaps to specify a precise distance from one existing object to another. AutoCAD prompts you to select the object from which you want to create an offset copy. Select Object to Offset or. Third step. Select a single object such as a line, a polyline, or an arc. Note that you can select only one object at a time with the Offset command. AutoCAD asks where you want the offset object. Specify point on site to offset or. Fourth step. Point to one side or the other of the objects and then click. It doesn't matter how far away from the object the crosshairs are when you click, you're simply indicating a direction. AutoCAD repeats the select object prompt in case you want to offset other objects by same distance. Select object to offset or. 5 step. Go back to step 3 if you want to offset another objects or press enter if you are finished offsetting objects for now. The commands in next section, trim, extend, break, fillet, chamfer, blend and join, are useful for shortening and lengthening objects, for breaking them in two, and for putting them back together again. Trim and extend. Trim and extend are the twin commands for making lines, polylines, and arcs shorter and longer. The two commands and their prompts are almost identical, so the following steps cover both. We show the prompts for the trim command. The extend prompts are similar. Step 1. Click the Trim or Extend button on the Home tab's Modify panel. AutoCAD prompts you to select cutting edges that will do the trimming, or if you choose the Extend command, boundary edges for extended too. Second step. Press Enter to accept the default option to select all drawing objects, or select individual objects by picking them. Press Enter to end object selection. The objects you select in this step become the cutting edge of the Trim command or the boundary to which objects will be extended by the Extend command. AutoCAD prompts you to select objects that you want to trim or extend. Extend doesn't have the Erase option. Step number 3. Select a single object to trim or extend. Choose the portion of the object that you want AutoCAD to trim away or the end of the objects that's closer to the extend to boundary. AutoCAD trims or extends the objects to one of the objects that you selected in step 2. If AutoCAD can trim or extend the objects, for example, if the trimming objects and the objects to be trimmed are parallel, the command line displays an error message such as "Objects does not intersect an edge." You can select multiple objects to trim and extend by typing F and pressing Enter to use the Fence object selection mode, or by entering C to use crossing selection. Even better, you can use implied windowing and drag a selection box to select multiple objects. Step 4. Choose additional objects or press Enter when you are finished trimming or extending. Fillet and chamfer. Whereas trim, extend and break alter one object at a time, the fillet and chamfer commands modify a pair of objects. Fillet and chamfer show a preview of the result of the operation as soon as you select the objects to modify. If the fillet radius or the chamfer distances don't look right in the preview, you can change their values before completing the command. The following steps describe how to use the fillet command. The chamfer command works similarly except that instead of specifying a fillet radius, you specify either two chamfer distances or a chamfer length and angle. Step 1. Click the Fillet button on the Home tab's Modify panel. Fillet and chamfer share a flyout button if you see a straight line corner instead of a rounded one. Click the flyout arrow to select fillet. AutoCAD displays the current fillet settings and prompts you to select the first object for filleting or specify one of three options: Current settings, mode, trim, radius, select first objects, or undo polyline, radius, trim, multiple. Step 2. Type R and press Enter to set the fillet radius. AutoCAD prompts you to specify the fillet radius that it uses for future fillet operations. Specify fillet radius. Step 3. Type a fillet radius and press Enter. The number you type will be radius of the arc that joins the two lines. AutoCAD then asks you to select the first object. Step 4. Select the first line of the pair that you want to fillet. AutoCAD prompts you to select the second objects for filleting. Step 5. Select the second line of the pair that you want to fillet. AutoCAD fillets the two objects, drawing an arc of the radius that you specified in Step 3. You can fillet two lines and specify a radius of 0 to make them meet at a point. If you have lots of lines to fillet, whether with a 0 or the same non-zero radius, use the fillet command's multiple option to speed the process. If you start fillet and select two parallel lines, you get a nice 180-degree arc joining them. You can add fillets to arcs and splines, and you can fillet all the vertex and polyline at one time by choosing the polyline option before you select the objects. Holding down the Shift key before picking the second line automatically gives you a clean intersection, the same as if you would set the fillet radius to 0. The chamfer command has the same Shift selection option. Here's the end of our seminar. Now you know how you can modify objects through Edit tool with all this manipulation we had learned. And on next seminar we'll study how to work with text and dimension line styles in AutoCAD.